here we're trying to find all the zeros of this polynomial, and they tell you one to begin with. So they say -1 plus I is a complex zero. Well, because we know complex zeros come in pairs, then we know -1 minus I has to be a zero also. And then notice this is degree 3, so it's going to have at most 3 zeros. So we have 2 of them. We're basically just looking for one more. All right, so what can we do? Well, once we know zeros, we know factors, so we could use that to our advantage. Or we could say, well, if it's a zero, that means you can do synthetic division. It divides in evenly. So nice thing, you can do synthetic division with complex numbers, just like you can with regular. So be careful when I write down my coefficients for this. This is 1x to the third, no x squareds, -2x, and -4. All right, so add 1 plus nothing, and then 1 times a complex number, 1 times both of the parts gives you -1 plus I, and then 0 plus that just gives you -1 plus I. All right, so now is the only part I might have to jot this off on the side. To multiply this and this, I have to FOIL, because complex numbers have 2 parts to them. So somewhere off here I'll write, well, it's -1 plus I times -1 plus I. So -1 times -1 is 1. My inside term is minus I. My outside term is also minus I. And my last term is I times I, so I squared. So this is -2I if I get like terms together. And this says 1, and this is the same as -1. Right, I squared reduces to -1. So 1 and -1 add to 0, so it looks like I just get -2I. Alright, so now when I add -2 plus this just gives me -2 plus -2I, because that's a real part and imaginary part. They're not like terms, so I can't get them together. And so same thing to multiply here. This number times this number. And you can also check these on your calculator. You do have an I button. It's right near the decimal, and it's a second key button. So if you want to, you can do your foiling, and then at the same time just because when you're going through that much work, you'd hate to make a really little sign error or something like that. So you can also test that out. It looks like if I multiply those two things, I get 4. So I'm going to do it here by hand to FOIL it, but it's a good thing to check. So first term, -1 times -2. My inside term is -2I. Outside term is +2I. And last term is -2I squared. But that's -2 times -1. Those two cancel, so it's like 2 plus 2. So we were right on the 4. And we get a remainder of 0. And so that tells us, hey, that did divide in evenly. All right, once you divide one thing out, then don't go back to the beginning. We're trying to divide out as much as we can, so we're left with just that last 0. So this is the answer you get, 1x squared. This is a coefficient on x, and plus this at the end. So take our answer, and we'll divide that by the other 0. So we use this one, now we can do this one. Other good news about this is that whereas this one got a little tedious a couple times, right, when we had to FOIL, once you divide by the pair, so the partner that goes along with this imaginary 0, it'll actually work out a lot nicer on the second one. So you'll see a lot of stuff canceling. It won't be as tedious as the other one. So 1 plus nothing is 1, and then 1 times this gives me -1 minus I. Notice when I add, this and this cancel, and so I just get -2. Then -2 times -1 is 2. -2 times -I is +2I. So those add to 0. All right, now picture what this says then. If this was on x to the third, we divided once, that was on x squared. Now we're just down to x minus 2. So if x minus 2 is our last part after we divided out 2 factors already, then we know that 2 is a 0. And so there's that third 0 we were looking for all along. There's more than one way to do these for sure. And as long as you know what you're doing and understand it, I'm really not picky about which way you do any of this. You're always just using all the tools at your disposal to look for zeros. I mainly just try to show you what I think is probably the quickest or easiest way to do it, but I'm not picky. You don't have to do, the same method. You're just finding the zeros.